Hey everyone, today I'm coming to you with a review on the brand new Marvel Legends Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 Cyborg Spider-Woman. Now I got this figure at GameStop Canada, and this is the final figure that I have to review from the Marvel Legends Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 lineup, at least for now, because I really do hope and I do think we will get more figures from this movie and the upcoming sequel to it. I just think there's so much designs that they can do, and that's only based off of the trailers. I haven't even seen the movie yet, so guaranteed once the movie comes out, there will be even more characters that they can make. But for now, with this figure and this wave, I gotta say they have done a lot of really good things. It has been quite a controversial wave, and I will do a wave comparison and ranking closer to the end so you can get my final thoughts on this whole wave in general. But as for now, focusing on this figure, this is such a beast of a Marvel Legend. I never thought we would really get something like this in the line. We get so many different spider characters, and majority of them are kind of reuses, so to get this entirely new sculpt for this kind of steampunk spider character is honestly absolutely insane, and I'm very excited to see what this character does in the movie. But even with not seeing the movie, I still absolutely love this figure. That being said, I do have some gripes with it, and I will get into that later. But as for now, let's get into the review for the brand new Marvel Legends Cyborg Spider-Woman. Now, as always, before I go over the figure, I do want to start off with the packaging. This is the only figure in this lineup for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 Legends that is in this style of packaging. And if I'm being honest, I think I would have preferred if all the figures would have been in this style of packaging. Obviously, not this big because this is for a deluxe figure. But if that was the case, as I expressed in previous videos for figures in this wave, we could have gotten a Build-A-Figure, and more specifically, we could have gotten this figure as the Build-A-Figure. And later on, I will show you how this was actually designed to be a Build-A-Figure. Marvel Legends makes a bunch of deluxe figures, especially we've gotten a bunch recently with like the Blob and the Groot, and those figures are designed just as they are. You can't take them apart. They are designed to be deluxe figures, but this one, you can take every single limb apart as if it was a Build-A-Figure, which is almost confirmation that this whole design and whole release of this wave was a subject of the plastic-free packaging. They designed these figures like 2 to 3 years in advance, and I don't think the plastic-free packaging was a complete confirmed idea at the time. So they probably were going to do this as a Build-A-Figure wave, but then they announced that, and they probably thought maybe it would be better if the characters, because it is going to be such a popular movie, are in the windowed packaging, but we don't get a Build-A-Figure. It just really does suck, especially when, just look at that price. That's the price we're paying for this Build-A-Figure, in which case it could have been free. Just definitely irks me, and that is probably my main gripe with this figure overall. But for the actual packaging here, very kind of lame render on the front. It is just a vanilla pose, which I guess is cool. Does get the job across very well across Spider-Verse. You have the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 logo down there, the name of the figure, Marvel Legends series logo, the price. I'm just going to not look at that because that is a quite scary price, even more scary than this actual figure. There you have the same kind of design that was on the retro cards, just on the side of the box. Marvel Legends logo. On this side, you have a very cool kind of concept art image of the actual figure. And this is another reason I really wish now that we would have gotten all these figures in this packaging, because we could have gotten some really cool concept art images. This is the only figure that we are getting this kind of style of imagery with, so that definitely is a bummer. On the back, you have another rendered image of the figure. Oh, it's not a vanilla pose. They bent the elbow like 45 degrees. That is awesome, or 90 degrees rather. There you have a measurement of the figure and a kind of shadow outline of the figure. Nothing much more on the back, nothing much more on the top, nothing much more on the bottom. So let's get into the review for the brand new Marvel Legends Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 Cyborg Spider-Woman. And here we have the Cyborg Spider-Woman figure, looking like easily one of the craziest Marvel Legends figures that we have ever gotten. There is so much going on with this figure, and frankly, I don't know where to start with it. And I've said that with a lot of figures in this wave, but to be fair, contrary to popular belief, there is a lot going on with these figures. The sculpts are actually really, really good. The only downside with a lot of these figures, specifically this one, and I will show it right away, is the paint apps. And that's kind of the first thing that I want to go over here with this figure. Looks so awesome and great from the front. Awesome. Love this. Awesome. Hey, the paint is looking really, really good on this figure. Some of the best I've seen in this line, if I'm being honest. I imagine it will continue to be as good on the back. Oh, wait. No, it is not. For some reason, they just decided to completely not paint the webbing patterns on the back. The blue parts are fine. They're not really painted on the front. But as you can see, this webbing pattern, which does look really cool, kind of looks like some barbed wire. I'll get into that later. But as you can see, it looks very, very good. And then they just completely do not paint it on the back. And that is, I guess I'll just describe it as sad, especially when I showed you the price of this figure. It is not a cheap figure. It is a very, very expensive Marvel Legends figure, and I do think from a certain point of view, it is worth that price because of the sculpt, but it is really, really pushing it, especially when we don't get accessories, which there's not really a lot that I think they could have included here, but mainly when they just decide to completely not paint a very important portion of this figure. And that is just, it's baffling to me because that is not at all what I want to see from this line. I love this Marvel Legends line, and I really don't think there is an excuse for this. There's no, like, justifying factor that at least I can think of. I'm going to say let me know in the comments below if there's any reason, but I honestly don't think anyone will. It just is a very, very lazy move that is on the boots as well, just completely absent, and it doesn't even really fade that well. Like, even if you look at the top of this foot right here, it kind of starts here, and then it's just not there at all, and then on the side it's completely not there, and then here it just like kind of cuts off right in the middle. Just really, really sad overall. But at least the paint that is on this figure does look pretty good overall. Although now that I'm looking at the front a little closer, that paint right there is completely off. And I imagine it is like that in more spots. Just overall, like I mentioned, when you're paying the price that you are for this figure, I feel like it goes without saying that the parts that you decide to start painting should just be fulfilled the whole way around, but I guess that isn't a thing here, and that really is the biggest disappointment, but I don't want to linger on it too long at the same time, so let's just get into the actual sculpt itself. Now, starting off with the head sculpt of this figure, I do like the design that we have going on here overall, but that being said, I do find the head sculpt to be pretty small for how big of a body this figure is, but that is accurate to the character design in the movie, at least based off of the trailers and the concept art image that we have seen so far. I do like that muzzle design with the two air filters on the side. That kind of does work really well for the whole apocalyptic and steampunk design that they're going for here, along with the two eyepieces. That definitely does add to that design. That one eyepiece is kind of utilizing the photoreal tech, if you can see, although obviously not for a likeness, just to make the detail on that look a little bit finer than using normal paint. This one, though, is kind of using that standard marbleized plastic with a few painted dots. I don't believe those dots are photoreal, and I don't imagine they would be, but at least, thank God, the whole head sculpt is painted all the way through, which is important. Now, the webbing pattern design of this figure does start on the head sculpt, and if you didn't realize, it is supposed to be a barbed wire pattern, which is so awesome for the webbing. It just makes it look even more steampunked and apocalyptic, which is another reason why I like this figure so much. And that is sculpted all the way throughout, at least on the parts that are on the figure, and that is the main thing that is good. Like I mentioned, though, it isn't all painted, which does definitely suck, but at least the sculpt is there. But then moving down to the torso of this figure, obviously that barbed wire webbing pattern does continue, and the parts that are painted do look pretty good overall, at least in my opinion, although there are a few misses here and there, like that part like I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure there's a few other spots, but at the same time, I'm not going to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. As we know, half of the figure is not painted, at least the barbed wire webbing pattern. The shoulder pad, though, definitely does catch my eye. There's got to be like 20-30 spikes on there. I do like the gold color they went with. Definitely does contrast with the rest of the colors of this figure pretty well, and that is on there pretty good. You can't really move it, and when you move the arm up, it kind of just bends a little bit. It's not going to get in the way that much. But the really, really cool thing going on with this torso that I kind of just realized right before I started filming this video is you do have these 8 chains going around the figure, and I kind of just thought it was chains, but it's supposed to be spider legs. I don't know if that was really, really obvious, but I kind of just noticed that like 3-4 days after I got this figure, but that is so cool. And that chain detail does look really good overall. But in general, on top of the parts that aren't painted, at least the barbed wire, I do think a black wash would have done wonders on this figure, especially on this chain part. I do like the color plastic that they went with, but I do think, like I mentioned, some black wash would bring it to life. But yeah, that is a very, very cool design. I think they all just intersect on the back of the figure. I thought that would have been like a little peg hole, but it is not. And then, as you can see, no paint up there, as I mentioned earlier. But other than that, you also do have this belt, which does look pretty good overall. But like with the chains, I do think some black wash would definitely bring that to life. Although I don't really know what the pouches would hold. Probably some ammunition, but would that really even fit in this massive cannon thing? I don't know. It's probably just for design, a little bit of a plot hole. Now, for the one arm of this figure that isn't a obvious massive rocket machine gun cannon thing, it does look look pretty good. That barbed wire webbing pattern does continue like most parts of this figure, as does the lack of the paint, as you can see on the back there and the top there. Also, you can see how they kind of designed the shoulder pad with the gold parts kind of just ported underneath. No paint there on the top, but that isn't as bad as some other parts because you don't see most of it, but still annoying. You do have some cool straps going around. Definitely does add a little bit of detail. And then for the hands, you do have these spikes, which look really, really good. I would hate to get like a backhand with that. That would be a little bit painful, let's just say. And then you do have this kind of, I was going to call it a bracelet, but that doesn't seem like a bracelet. Just has a bunch of spikes on it as well. Very, very cool design for this one arm. I do think it would have been cool to maybe get an extra arm for this figure that was just like this, but for this side, although that wouldn't have made sense. I kind of am, though, thinking what this figure would look like with just those two arms. That would be pretty cool. Maybe we see that, but at the same time, this does look like a severed arm. Now, for the massive arm cannon machine gun that we have going on here, it is in a pretty consistent color throughout, that being that standard marbleized Marvel Legends silver that they use with a lot of figures, although there is a few parts that are painted with gray, like those patches, this part and this part as well, but the rest of it is in that same color. You do have 7 holes, or rather 7 barrels, I believe, on the front, and that does work with these bigger repulsor effects, which were included with figures such as Ironmonger, Apocalypse, and the Hydra Stomper. These ones are specifically from the Hydra Stomper, and they do fit in any one of those holes. And the problem is, though, you cannot take this part off. At least I don't think you can. So I believe you could only put one on at a time, or you could probably try to squeeze another one on, but they'd probably be going in different directions. But at least getting one on, that does look pretty good. And if you did want to do a stop motion, you could probably just, you know, rotate it or turn it here, because you can turn it here as well as here, and then at the bicep as well, or whatever that is. I don't exactly know if you can call it a bicep. For the rest of the design, you do have these spikes, which aren't that spiky. They are a softer plastic, so don't worry, you're not going to break yourself if that's what you were worried about. You have some wiring design, which does look really good and really would have benefited from some paint, like most of this figure, especially up here. That would have looked really good because that does go all the way around. Now for this shoulder pad here, not as cool as this side with all these spikes, but it does still look pretty good overall. Kind of looks like a shark fin, or like a mechanical shark fin. But for the rest of this, I really don't think there's too much more to go over on this arm. Lots of really cool details, but I just don't exactly know what to call anything, so I'm not even going to attempt to call it anything. But for the rest of the figure, at least the bottom half, you do have these really bulky blue legs, which do have some sculpting detail, but to be fair, I'm not a huge fan of that sculpting detail. It does look really animated, which, you know, makes sense. This is a animated figure, but right there, that kind of just looks like a lightning bolt on the crotch, and that is a little bit weird, at least to me, and that detail does continue on the back. Now for the legs, on both sides, you do have different designs, very, very different designs. On this side, you do have some red straps with some of those spikes that were kind of on this hand. On this side, you do have some of those same designs that were on this arm, just those gray bands going around. Then you do have these kind of Wolverine looking claws, which are also very, very pliable. So don't worry, you're not going to prick yourself on any parts of this figure, even though it looks like it. They're all soft plastic. So if for some reason you're buying this for a kid, which I would not recommend, don't worry about that at least. This boot has a really cool design with like the flap coming down. That is quite cool. And then this side is completely different, has buckles or something, looks really good there. And that is painted, shockingly. You got 5 painted buckles, which does look good. And then you do have like a steel toe on this side, and then like a steel base on this side with some like treads, which looks really good. I just love the inconsistency, which is something I wouldn't expect to say, but it does really work with this figure. It doesn't work with all the figures, but because that is what this design is supposed to be, I think it looks really good overall. And I love these spikes right here. That I would hate to be like kicked by this. I do have a pouch over here, but other than that, frankly, I think I've gone over everything that I wanted to with this figure. So let's get into Cyborg Spider-Woman's articulation. Now for the articulation on this Cyborg Spider-Woman, it is pretty good overall for how big this figure is. Head goes back that much, down that much, a little bit of tilt, actually a lot of tilt. Full 360, pretty good range overall with that really, really small head. Arms go up that much, or rather this arm goes up that much, down, full, well, you get it, full 360. I was going to say full 360, but I do not want to break this figure. Bicep swivel, full 360, double jointed pinless elbows, which do look really good. This hand is on a vertical hinge, so up, down, and full 360. Now for articulation on this arm, that is a completely different story. It kind of goes full 360, moves out that much. You do have a upper bicep swivel, or is that what it is? I don't exactly think that is what you could call it. And then like I mentioned, these parts do turn here. For the ab crunch, does go down that much, back that much, and that does cut off. You do see a little bit of blue. Full 360, as you can see, the legs do kick forward that much. Back, splits, upper thigh cut, double jointed, pinless, painful knees, and no boot rotation on either side, but the ankles do go up, down, and beautiful ankle rocker pivot on both sides. This one doesn't go up as much because of that flap, but still they do have good range overall. Ooh, put that forward. Now, first for comparisons, here we have Cyborg Spider-Woman next to the recently released Deluxe Blob, as well as the older Deluxe Hydra Stomper, which frankly doesn't even fit in the frame. Next up for comparisons, here we have the Cyborg Spider-Woman next to Cyborg Spider-Man, as well as the retro-carded animated cel-shaded Spider-Man, although this one is also a retro card. Thought I'd compare this next to this one because they are both cyborgs, like I mentioned, and they both have one robotic arm. I guess that's what you could call robotic, and they have a very similar belt color, but overall pretty similar designs, but the main difference is that this is Spider-Woman and this is Spider-Man. I'm really interested to see if this is like a suit or if that's the actual size of the character. Just in general, I'm really excited to see this character in the movie. Here we have Cyborg Spider-Woman next to the Monster Venom Build-A-Figure, as well as the 20th anniversary of Marvel Legends Hulk figure. And lastly, for comparisons, here we have the Cyborg Spider-Woman figure next to all of the other figures in this wave, although technically she is a separate figure because she is a deluxe, but like I mentioned numerous times, let's be honest, she is the Build-A-Figure, and I actually never showed you if a spot would stand. Come on, stand, buddy, just stand. You can take all the parts off of this figure as if it were a Build-A-Figure, just like so. I'm not going to take them all off, but as you can see, the legs come off, and I assure you the rest of it does come off too. But for my rating of all of these figures, that was very, very tricky, although at the same time, not really, just the top ones. My top three favorites were a little bit tricky, but coming in last place is the Peter B. Parker figure. I actually like that figure more than I was expecting, but in general, I like all the other figures besides him a little bit more. He is the only figure to reuse parts, which is shocking. All of these other figures are complete new sculpts, so shout out to Hasbro for that. But yeah, he is last place. After that, I'm going to give it to the Jessica Drew Spider-Woman. I actually do love that figure as well, but once again, I just like all the other figures here a little bit more. Very, very cool figure and very, very unique overall. After that, I think I'm going to give it to the Spot. I love that figure. A lot of people don't because a lot of people were wanting the Spot, and that is not what anyone was really expecting, but I do love the animated proportion, and I'm really, really excited to see him as the supposed villain in the upcoming Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 movie. After that, this might shock some of you, but I think I'm going to give it to the Spider-Man 2099. I like that figure, and a lot of people do like that figure. I just really think the lack of claws and an extra head definitely does hold back that figure. But that being said, not a terrible figure by any means. After that, I'm going to give it to the Cyborg Spider-Woman. Love that figure. I really do. I love the whole sculpt of it, as I expressed in this video a lot. Just the paint really does hold the figure back, as well as the fact that it is a Build-A-Figure, and the price, obviously, is just absolutely insane. But the final three, the top three, okay, put your guesses in the comments below. And as always, I do want to hear your rankings before I show my final three. Please let me know what you think of this whole wave and rank them in the comments below. Very, very intrigued by that. But coming in third place is the Miles Morales. I love that figure. I like it way more than I was expecting. But that being said, like I said numerous times, I just like the figures above it a little bit more. Now, top two. Okay, here we go. This was really, really hard for me. It's between the Spider-Punk and the Spider-Gwen. But in the end, I just think in general, the best figure of this wave is the Spider-Gwen. I absolutely love that figure. I think that is such an amazing Marvel Legend figure and very, very underrated. But that being said, he is also very good. They're very, very equal, but still, in the end, I'm going to give him second place, and I'm going to give her first place. That is my rating for this whole wave in general. I got to say, I really do like this wave. I like it way more than I was expecting, and I think a lot of you really have strong opinions on this wave, and that is fair. I also had those opinions, but now that I got them in person, I have to say I love these figures. I really do. Not all of them are worth the price, but certainly some of them I really would recommend, and I guess the ones that I would really recommend are my top three: the Spider-Gwen, the Miles, and the Spider-Punk. The rest are pretty good overall, but I definitely do think majority of these will go on clearance, especially that Cyborg Spider-Woman. But yeah, that is kind of my whole thoughts on this wave in general. Now, for my final thoughts on this Marvel Legends Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 Cyborg Spider-Woman figure, even though I did dog on this figure a lot in this video, I still really, really do like what Hasbro gave us overall. I love the sculpt, as I mentioned. The only real flaw with this is the paint, and it is a pretty big flaw overall. That is kind of unexcusable, especially with that price. But speaking of the price, I do recommend this figure, even though I haven't seen the movie. I just think the design is so cool, and this is just easily one of my favorite Marvel Legends in recent history. But that being said, I definitely, and I almost think I can say guarantee that this figure will go on clearance, but you know, nowadays you can't guarantee anything. But this figure I would not recommend buying at full price, but I do recommend getting it at a lower discounted price, as I do think it most definitely will go on sale. But for my rating of this figure with the price in account, like I just mentioned, get it on clearance. That's not going to help with the rating that price by any means, but I guess without the price, which, you know, that is a weird thing to take off, but just for the figure itself, I think I got to give this figure like it would be close to an 8, but I don't think it deserves an 8. I think it's lower than that. So I think I'm going to give it like a 7.7 out of 10. I think that is a fair rating. I do love this figure overall. The product is absolutely amazing. Just like I mentioned, the 3 downsides are the price, the really bad paint, and the fact that this was designed to be a Build-A-Figure. But other than that, please let me know what you think of this figure in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear what you all have to say. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you for watching all the other videos if you have. And if you haven't, I'm still very happy that you are watching this one. I really did enjoy making all of these Across the Spider-Verse videos, and I'm very excited to see the movie. But until my next video, I have been Jagger Collector. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I have so many videos coming out. I probably have about 25 or so videos, and I'll tease a little bit right now because you made it all the way to the end. We got X-Men figures, we got Guardians, we got the X-Men 3-packs, we got Blob, I just got the X-Men wave, we got Luke Skywalker from Mandalorian, Cal Kestis, etc. Lots of videos to come, so if any of those interest you, definitely do subscribe. You're not going to want to miss those. But as for this video, thank you so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys. Grrr.